Storytelling is something we're trying to get started again. It's a tradition that's meaningful for this area, and so let's have at it. Our first person though this morning is this afternoon is Richard Crowe, and I'm going to let Richard tell him about himself and get started. Thank you, Richard, for showing up.
Oh, thank you. Boy, I'll tell you what, I've lived a long time. I was there at the hanging. Were you? I was about 10.
I was for the 100th anniversary.
Well, it was about 126 years ago now. About 126 years ago now, so it's been a while, but it was a rainy day like this. And, you know, the question is, did he do it? Did he not do it? Did he die there? Did he escape? We got people that got to try to answer that question today. So let me just start by telling you a little bit about Red Fox, who he was, what kind of man he was, what his family was like, and all those kinds of things. So help me here. Close your eyes. Think about 126 years ago. Think about what this territory was like, what this country was like. What are you seeing? What do you think it was like?
Huge trees.
Big trees. No trucks. No trucks.
No law.
No law. Okay. How were the roads?
No.
What roads? What roads? How were the medical facilities? What roads?
First hospital in the whole area, including Roanoke, was in Stonehaven.
Okay. All right. So you're thinking, you get the idea. So I was 10 years old back then, and I was there for the hanging, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. But I knew a little bit about Doc, and I want to tell you a little bit about him, and what kind of man he was, and all those kinds of things. You're interested in that?
Yeah.
All right. The first Doc was born in 1836 up the river here at Rye Cove, and he went to school there. This stove right here reminds me of his one-room schoolhouse. And one-room school, one teacher, and you know, in those days, they would pay went to about the 6th or 7th grade. They'd pay the older students all day to go out and cut wood and bring it back and put it in that potbelly stove. And the first graders would line up real close to the stove, and then the second graders, and then the third graders, and so forth. And then the 6th and 7th graders would be in the back. Well, how do you suppose that teacher taught? How do you suppose she got anything, or he got anything done? He would teach the older kids, and then they would turn around and teach the younger kids. Now, if you think about it, that's repetition. That's not bad. So the teacher shares his knowledge, and then the students have to share their knowledge with the younger kids. And if you ever taught before, they tell me that getting ready to teach and teach is when you really learn that stuff. That's when you really retain it. So even though I only had a 6th and 7th grade education, for the times, it was pretty good. When he got done with his schooling, he started looking around for something to do. What was going to be his career? What was going to be his job? And there was a family member there who was a doctor. And that doctor took him into his practice, and in those days, if you were going to be a lawyer or you were going to be a doctor, you sat at the foot of a practitioner. You didn't go to any fancy graduate school. You didn't go away. You sat and you learned from that person. And so Doc Taylor became Doc Taylor by sitting at the foot of his relative, a doctor, and that was down in Rye Cove. Well, when he got to have enough knowledge that he felt confident to treat people, he also started studying plants and herbs. He thought that, you know, they didn't have a lot of medicine in those days. So these plants and herbs, the Indians taught him that these were natural healing plants. And so he became a specialist in those. He went out and picked them all. And all his life, whenever you'd see him riding on that big black horse that he rode, the saddlebags would be there, and they would be full of herbs and plants for medicinal purposes. And He also kept his Bible in there. The Bible was fleece lined. I got a picture of it here. I'll just share it with you. Just to show you how much he wore it out. Here's a picture of his Bible. And on the back side is a picture of his great-great-granddaughter holding it. But you can see how much he studied that Bible. So he's a doctor. He moves across the state line into Letcher County. Moves to Whitesburg. And Whitesburg at that time had there were about 20,000 people over there now, I guess, but there were only 50 families there. And there might have been another doctor, but he left Rye Cove because they didn't have a need. They didn't have enough patients for 2 doctors, so he left and he went over to Kentucky and he set up a practice. And he operated out of his house. People would come to see him at his office, or he would go out on horseback and make house calls. And one of the things that he did was he met a Methodist preacher. I've heard it said it was a Baptist preacher, but I think it was a Methodist preacher. And this Methodist preacher took him aside. He was obviously a smart enough guy. He taught him everything that he knew about the Bible. So he learned at the foot of this preacher, and he baptized him, and he spent more time with him, teaching him things about running a church and all that sort of thing. Now, I don't know why he moved, but after he became educated as a doctor, he moved to Kentucky. After he became a preacher, he moved back to Virginia. He moved here in Wise County. First, he went to Bold Camp, and some of you remember Bold Camp is where Dad John was baptized. And there were supposed to have been 3,000 people there at Bold Camp when Dad John was baptized. I wasn't there, I don't know, but
My dad was.
You're okay, you were, all right.
My dad.
You remember well? Okay, great. And so he lived there at Bold Camp for a while, and then he moved up to Gladeville. And again, he opened the office in his home. People would come to him, and he would treat them with the herbs and the plants and all that. But he was also a spiritualist. He would lay his hands on them. And if he had to make a house call, the patient couldn't make it into the office, he'd get on that black horse and he'd ride out to wherever they lived. As you said, there weren't many good roads. There weren't any roads at all to speak of. But he'd go out there to their house, and he'd stay with them until the person either lived or died. So how did he treat them? First thing he'd do is come in and he'd be like a psychologist. He would talk to them, praise the situation, see where they were hurting, see how long they've been hurting, and all those good things. And when he found out where it was, then he would come and he would lay hands on them as a spiritualist. So if you had pains in your shoulder, he would lay his hands on their shoulder, he'd mumble a few words, and he would say to that person, the patient, now, I want you to concentrate. I want you to concentrate on me. And I'm going to concentrate on you. So you lay there, think about me, think about your pain, and I'm going to go outside here, and I'm going to concentrate on you. So he'd go outside, and he would hold his hands up to the sky, and he would chant. And he might be out there for hours. He'd come back in, praise the situation, see if the patient was any better. He told the patient that when they felt a glow of pain, a glow of heat in their place, wherever it hurt, that was a sign they were healed. So he would keep going back out and come back in, go back out and come back in until the person either said they were healed or they died.
Yes.
And remember, he was a preacher, but he was also the doctor. So for about 37 years, all these people in this area knew Doc Taylor as their Savior. He brought them into this earth. He took them out of this earth. He married them. He healed them. He was indispensable to them for 37 years. You think about that. Small community, and people, you know, if they got sick or they needed spiritual help, they went to Don. So he was really well respected in this community. Now, I've been talking to his great-granddaughter, and she shared some information with me. Brother Ernie back there put me on her, and the information that she shared was about their family. She says that her history goes all the way back to her 25th great-grandpa in the year 924. And there was 3 generations from France, and then 10 generations from England, and then 11 generations here in Virginia, leading up to the Red Fox. Their name was Taillefer while they were in France. And when they got over here, she says they're related to 5 presidents. They're related to James Madison, William Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Abraham Lincoln, and Benjamin Harrison. And they're related to George Taylor, who signed the Declaration of Independence. So their family history goes really deep and strong in terms of the foundation of this country. So that's the kind of family that Doc Taylor came from. Then he's got all this service time, 37 years serving this community, and people respected him. And then we think about his family. What was his family like? He had a wife, and his wife was one of the most loyal women I could ever imagine. She stayed with him through thick and thin. She stayed with him through the jail time days. But he had a problem. He had 3 daughters before the Civil War, and then he enlisted and went off to serve in the Company C in the Virginia military, fought for the Confederates. This time, when he went off to war, those 3 little baby girls were around their mother's feet, and she was 2 months pregnant. He had a boy named Sylvan with her. And so if you think about the cost to die, to be in the Civil War, to fight for the Confederacy, think about this. He left his wife, 3 little girls, not knowing that she was going to have a son by the time he got back. And about a month after Doc enlisted, his father enlisted, William P. And about a month or so after he went to service, he was captured by the Yankees, and he was sent to a prison near the Chicago area. So today, we've got telephones, telegraphs, tell a woman, you know that story. Anyway, there wasn't that good communication back in those days. So his wife doesn't know where he is when he's off to war. He doesn't know he's got a son coming along, and he doesn't know what happened to his father. That was a long time to spend worrying just about your relatives. Well, his daughter says that he was really a good dad, that he loved his children, and he made sure that they had a good education. And so we have that sort of view of what he was like. I didn't know him in those days, but she says he was a good father. After these kids all got grown up and went off, something happened to him. Something changed his mind. I got a letter here from his grandson, Lowry Baker. And Lowry, I'll let Lowry's words tell you what he said. Said, Marshall Taylor, my grandpa, joined the Methodist Church, went to preaching, and then made a doctor in Kentucky and Virginia in his day. Then he let mean women lead him in the wrong way for a long time. Doesn't this sound biblical? This sounds biblical, doesn't it? Adam was sinless, and Eve and that damn snake just caused all his problems. But here are these women leading a good man off away from his wife. He had a son named Blue with the first one. He still remained married to his wife. He still paid her bills. She still loved him. He got tired of that one, went on and had another son with another woman. The wife still loved him, still cared about him. And after, what would you say, he burned all those bridges behind him? He didn't find any other women. I don't know what the story was, but anyway, in his 50s, he came home and he went back to preaching. We have a forgiving God.
Probably run out of matches.
Well, at any rate, that sort of leads us up to what we're here to talk about, and that's the hanging. The situation that got him hung was right down the road here at Killing Rock. Most of you know where that is. And previous to the Killing Rock situation, Ira Mullins and he had gotten into a fight. They were both bootleggers. Now I assure you that Doc's bootlegging was for medicinal purposes. But Ira Mullins, he was just out to get you drunk. So they had a misunderstanding. And in that process, Doc shot Ira in the shoulder. Now it's a strange situation. He just shot the man and he's his doctor. So he treated him, and the problem was after that Ira Mullins' shoulder never got better. It always hurt him, and he couldn't raise his hand above his head. So Ira Mullins figured he owed Doc something. And he put out the message to all his friends that he wanted Doc killed and he wanted Doc's family killed. That was a lot of pain, I guess. So we get up to the Killing Rock days, and it's a foggy day like this, cold and wet. A bunch of people there, but they couldn't see each other because of the fog. In the end, 5 people are killed and 2 horses are killed. And one of the people that's killed is Ira Mullins, the guy that wanted Doc killed. So I don't know whether Doc was there that day or not. I just don't know. I was at the hanging, but I wasn't there. So they had a trial. Well, the sheriff hauled him in, this well-respected man in the community. When you saw Doc, I should tell you what he looked like, I guess. He had blue eyes and he had red hair. Bright red hair on his chin and lighter red hair on his head. And by the time he got to be in his 50s, the head was sort of bald. There wasn't much hair there. But it was red, what he had. So he had these blue eyes and red hair, stood about 5'8", kind of lean. Always wore a black suit, so when you saw him, you knew him. He also always had 245 strapped to his hips. You never know what a doctor's going to run into or a preacher. He had a Winchester rifle strapped to his back, and across the other way he had a 5-foot-long telescope. So when he was out riding and looking around, he could always tell who he's going to come up to. So remember, he was a spiritualist. I forgot to tell you that in his house he also did seances. He could also hypnotize you. He could also throw his voice in his ventriloquist. So here's Doc's one-room variety show. He can do all these things. So anyway, we get to the Killing Rock stage. Ira Mullins is killed, and everybody thinks that Doc did it. Well, they check his gun. They check that Winchester. They check the bullets in that Winchester. And they weren't the same as the bullets that killed Ira Mullins. And there was no eyewitness. There was a woman that said she thought she heard Doc's voice. And based upon that evidence, it wouldn't hold up in these TV shows, would it? Based on that evidence, they found Doc guilty of killing Ira Mullins. They sentenced him to death, put him in the Wise County Jail. He was in there for almost a year. And 4 months before he died, he wrote this thing. I guess I passed it around a minute ago. But here's a picture of him on the day of the hanging. On this day, the only day of his life, he wore a white suit. And you can see the umbrellas here of the people in the rain. It was a day sort of like today. Let's see, is there another one of those things going around? There was something I was going to share with you. Going around. Let's see what's on the back of that. Oh yeah, here's what I wanted to share with you. On June the 11th, 1893, while in jail in Wise County, he asked Nancy, his wife, to bring him some paper. She brought him sheets of pink paper, and he wrote in hand this covenant with the Lord. It says, I solemnly acknowledge and enter into covenant with Jehovah by affirming and testifying to the two essentials of the Lord's new church, which is New Jerusalem. First essential, that God is one in essence and in person, in whom there is a Trinity, and that the Lord is that God, and that his human is divine. Second essential, that clarity and faith are one, like essence and its form, and that only those that have clarity and faith who live according to the commandments of the dialogue. I have conjunction with the Lord by a life according to the precepts of which are a testimony, and this testimony God has written in my heart. This is the token of the covenant signifying the Lord's greatest presence and charity to me, suggesting thus a remembrance there to me. Signed in the presence of Jehovah in his holy sanctuary, M.B. Taylor, written June 11, 1893. So while he was there, he had his Bible. He read it continuously. Nancy came to visit him every day. He wrote that covenant. And so he was at peace. When they took him to hang him that day, I don't know why, but it was awfully tall to look at as a 10-year-old. They had built a gallows in the back of the courthouse. It was up high, I guess, so lots of people could see. But you can see in that picture going around, there wasn't that many people there because it was a bad day. But it was built up high, and on top of it, this sort of looked like one of these water towers you might see today because it was enclosed. It was a round fence around it. Now, why you were going to have a public hanging and put it up high and put a round fence around the man you're hanging, I don't know. But I was there and I saw what I thought was the hanging. Some people say that he wasn't hung that day. Some people say there were 9 Freemasons that were on that gallows. Some say that he was a Freemason. Freemasons say that they've never had a member hung. I don't know whether that's a strong thing to brag about or not, but they say they've had some awfully bad people as Masons, but none have ever hung. Well, I don't know whether he was hung that day or not, even though I stood there watching. Some say that when he got up there in that white suit, he preached for about a half an hour, shared his story and his belief in the Lord. And they put the noose around him, pulled the boards out from under his feet, and he dropped. Some say there was a false floor there. He only dropped a few feet, and then he was able to take that noose off. Well, people up there knew what was going on. People outside did not know what was going on. They also say that there was 2 coffins there. One coffin was just as good as you could find anywhere. Some say they had a log in that coffin. The other coffin, they had a tube so you could breathe through it. So some say that Doc disappeared that day in that coffin and escaped later. We got some guys here that are going to tell you more stories about that in a little while. At any rate, I thought I had this thing solved. I went to Doc's gravesite the other day. You ever been there? It's over in the Wise Cemetery, down in the lower part and the older part, parked by the basketball goal that's on the side there. Walk over about 20 rows, up about 7, and there's a fairly new tombstone that the Sons of the Confederacy have put there. And I thought, well, why don't we just dig him up and see if there's a log in there or a body in there? So I called his great-great-granddaughter, and I said, how about this? Let's solve this question once and for all. Let's dig him up. And she said, well, you could do that, but there's one problem. He ain't there. He was supposed to be buried in the Wise Cemetery. At that time, they would have just put up a rock or something like that. Later, after his son Sylvan passed away, and his wife passed away, they were buried right there in that Wise Cemetery. And so when the Confederates wanted to honor him, they put that tombstone right by Sylvan's grave. Tombstone's there, but he's not. Whatever happened? Whatever happened to Doc? Some of you believe in ghosts, don't you? Is Halloween coming up next week? I'll tell you what. If you go out on Halloween night and you see a ghost with blue eyes and a red beard, you found it.